Along with organizing your CSS within the file itself comes the challenge of organizing CSS files in general. As we saw in chapters 3 and 4, we can have multiple CSS files working on any given page or site. For smaller sites, it's pretty typical to use only one or two style sheets because there's really no reason to get carried away with modularizing everything. However, there are certain instances, especially the larger an organization becomes, when it behooves you to sit down and really think about your server structure and how you're going to set up your folders and files to manage the documents as effectively as possible. A case in point here, we're looking at example 14_5, and you can see that I have a basic HTML page. We can preview this in Firefox, and take a look at it. Okay, so we have a layout. The basic layout here, a good example for this might be a university where you have multiple departments, and each department wants an individual look and feel, but there are some global styles such as the layout, which have to remain consistent from department to department. And this is one way you can begin modularizing your CSS files in order to accommodate those kinds of needs. So here we have this particular document laid out. This is your base file. Every department in the university could link to this single file. And that means that if any changes need to be made to the CSS layout for the entire school, then that file is changed one time and it propagates across the entire organization. If we go back over here into Dreamweaver, we can further that by importing styles into our base CSS depending upon the department that we are. Let's say I've got two departments and I'm department number 1. I can drop in to the CSS an import that will pull my departmental information in. We can save that file, and if we go ahead and load our XHTML page now, we'll flip on over to Dreamweaver, and you can see that I've got a certain style here within my layout that may be very different from a style that another department has. So let's go back to the base.css, and I can then use, let's say I want to be department number 2, and I'm going to import this particular file. And we can go back to Firefox and reload. And as you see, we have a slightly different style here. The issue then becomes, do you keep the main base in a primary location and then allow duplication across departments where they would be putting in their own imports? Or do you think of a structure where you use the cascade and the relationship of sort order and specificity to work with these various rules? So you create a source order, right? Remember that from chapter 4? You create a source order where certain departments will be able to get their styles applied, even if it's in a central location, because it's set up in such a way that it's using the cascade intelligently. These are complex issues. They are very highly technical. How to solve those problems is really very much dependent upon what kind of environment you're working in. I think the best advice I have at this point is to think about the way that the particular departments work, how large the organization is, what you might really need. You can import as much as you need to import. You can put multiple links within your documents. You can do all of that stuff, but I think it's always better to follow the keep it simple, stupid rule, the KISS rule, because the more replication you get, the more margin for error creeps in when you end up with those conflicts that we discussed earlier on in the tutorial. So again, there are many ways to skin this cat. You can definitely create that base or global style and have everybody link to that and then begin breaking it down by department. You can create the style within the individual departments. It just really depends upon the kind of political and social environment in which you work. But again, it's an important issue that needs to be thought out and worked on before you actually begin building the site. And I always joke there's something called organic growth syndrome, which is something I refer to as, these sites that just grow and grow and grow, and people just start putting things everywhere and they lose their basic structure. You'll notice, just for the sake of example, I've opened up the files here so that you can see the file structure that we have created here. And in some instances, you'll see that we have individual chapters with single HTML files. But in some instances, we have a chapter. Let me close everything else off so that we can go ahead and see this most clearly. And open chapter 3. And there we go. Let's close this. So here in chapter 3_03, what we have is a form of hierarchy within that where all of the files are organized. So we have a directory for XHTML files, we have a directory for our images, and we have a directory for our CSS. And this type of thinking, how to set up this structure, really, really plays into how you will organize and manage your site for the long term.